Last 5 seconds. Ready, start. Mr. Vice Chairman, corruption was also dragged in. I thought that it was rather unfortunate that certain names were mentioned. We have a rule in this house that if a matter is pending in a court of law, then that matter ought not to be mentioned here. It was most inappropriate, therefore, and it was a sheer transgression of the rules of this great house that his name has been dragged in number of times and reference have been made to matters that are pending in a court. Sir, I may also in passing make a reference or give vent to my feelings so far as industrial production in the public sector is concerned. It has been mentioned that the public sector undertakings have been white elephants in a way. They have been now. What are the reasons for that? One of the reasons is that the moment an industry comes in the public sector, certain provisions of the constitution begin to apply to it and it becomes almost impossible to discipline the working force, with the result that the same labor that works in a very fine manner when it is working for the Tatas and Birlas, the moment it comes in a government sector, all of a sudden seems to go sluggish. One of these days it will have to be considered by us whether it would not be appropriate to take out the public sector outside the operation of Article 311. Sir, I heard the warning of your bell. So many things have been said. I wish I had a little longer time to deal with them. Instead of being proud of the fact that the our satellites are orbiting the space that in the Antarctica, we have had a spectacular success. The matter is being decried. So much criticism has been made of our telephones. In most of our public undertakings, the problem has been that we have been running them at very low tariff. The telephone is no exception. We have been subsidizing it from the general revenues. We do it for railways, we do it for telephones, we do it for many other things. It is a wrong thing economically, therefore tariffs must be raised. Each undertaking must be self-sufficient. We are using old instruments, very old equipments that have been lying with us for a couple of decades. We have regenerated it, we have stretched it to almost the breaking point, which should have been a matter of satisfaction that we have been able to provide telephones to so many people with equipment that could not have met even half the number of telephones. Our railways are carrying so many passengers crying under the heavy load. Would the honorable members of the opposition like this, that the number of telephones be reduced to half, that passenger on railways be allowed only on permit, so that we can take away the load from it till such time that we are able to acquire new equipment? And where from do we acquire the equipments? From the money that we get from the users, and the moment tariff is raised to the extent necessary, there is a hue and cry. Therefore, I would submit that this kind of criticism does not take us any further. We are debating the president's address here, and let us debate it in a realistic manner. Let us not find fault with almost everything. There are good things, there are bad things in all systems. I do not pretend that everything that we say is 100% correct, but most certainly by and large what has been done in this country in the course of the last 2 years, especially in the last 12 months, is a spectacular success. The figures have been given in the president's address. The economic review the other day repeated them. I was reading the Financial Times. The Financial Times makes an admission that most of the things that we have said are absolutely correct and economy has turned the corner. We should have been jubilant about it. We should have been happy about it. We should have congratulated the government. Even the foreign magazines make this admission. Persons for whom there is no love lost between us and they, instead of doing that, you have been criticizing the government on every point. Some of our members have criticized the core, while some of them belonging to the ruling party have supported the motion on the president's address and said that it is a very good speech, that he has very elaborately discussed about the development of our country. As far as my position is concerned, it is my bounden duty to point out the merits of the president's address as well as certain flaws that I have noticed. I belong to a party which is neither with the opposition in its views completely nor with the other side. To a certain extent, I say that the president's address is not a formal document. Sir, with regard to the family planning program of the government of India, it is true that our government and our country have been perhaps the pioneers in respect of taking advantage of the World Health Organization expertise and assistance in regard to family planning program, and that in the last several years one cannot ignore some of the good sides of the achievements of the family planning program. Sir, I would like to invite the attention of the government to two aspects of the matter. One is that after having got this experience of some years, more than a decade or two, can we not have some kind of a sustained uniform policy with regard to the various projects and programs of family planning, particularly with regard to two things? One is assistance that we would like to rope in of the voluntary agencies, because by its very nature this is not something which the government can do. Government can spend money, government can give encouragement, but basically it is a question of educating the people, educating the illiterate and educating the people in the countryside, and also taking the maximum possible help from the voluntary social institutions in which a large number of women organizations are also doing a lot of good work. In this regard, the complaint I hear is that the policy of the government in regard to incentives offered as not quite free from faults. Every now and then different kinds of incentives are tagged on while attracting more people. Then those incentives are not maintained for a particular period of time, so that certain incentives are withdrawn and certain new incentives are given. The result is that the interest in the program is for the incentives offered rather than for the ultimate objective of controlled and healthy family planning. I would therefore request the government to ensure that the family planning program has a certain sustained outlook, that the incentives are well thought out and there is no charge every now and then in regard to this or that incentive. Then this should be free from very serious error. This is not only an error, I would say it is a criminal thing. In the name of operations, a large number of old men, people, children and boys are also hooked into the whole thing because they get some extra financial incentives. Now I come to demand about the freedom fighters. I endorse very warmly many of the points which my honorable friend made when he talked about genuine and bogus freedom fighters. In fact, the government of India themselves in various replies in the past in this August House have told us about how many bogus cases were also found out. Here we must remember that to some extent we, the elected members of the state legislature and parliament, are also responsible for giving false information or false certificates. I am not saying that this or that particular person has done it, but when the government say that in the absence of any proper proof, the certificate of a member of parliament, of member of legislative assembly should be attached, surely the member or parliament or member of legislative assembly should be 100% sure of his facts, and he just should not do it by way of obliging any person. It is there where the bogus cases come in. I am only making an appeal through this speech to members of legislative assemblies in state legislatures and members of parliament here, that we take extraordinary care so that we do not issue certificate liberally or irresponsibly, because otherwise it becomes more difficult for the government. The second point is that some freedom fighters are not yet included in this scheme. I don't know whether the minister has ready information at hand in this regard. There is also the project of old freedom fighters homes. I remember there is one in Delhi, but it is neglected. Some of the old freedom fighters who are living in Delhi are staying in this house. There is no one to look after them. They are not given proper food, proper drinking water, hot water for bath and so on, because they are old and infirm. Naturally they need these things all the more. Therefore I would like the government to take particular care of these old freedom fighters homes. Lastly, although I know that the government of India have paid a lot of money to these freedom fighters, I see from letters received by me not only from Gujarat but from other parts of the country as well as that the papers of freedom fighters are not disposed of, although the applications had been properly sent through the state administrations and more than 2 years have elapsed. Stop.